What's up guys, David here and welcome to the Fit Pro Daily. A new year is here and this year we want to make things even bigger and better. And there's no better way to start off than chasing down leads. We're going to start this year off with Allan Miles coming on to share his experience in being able to chase leads and follow up leads to make sure either you're getting them booked in for your consultations or you're doing your sales calls online. Anyway, enough of me talking, let's dive into this year's first guest interview. Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to this week's guest interview. This week, we've got a returning guest again. We've got Allan Miles coming on to share a little bit more wisdom and a little bit more on how to grow our businesses. So, Allan, welcome. How are things?
Yeah, good. That was a dramatic countdown that we went through there with some nice music. I felt like I was getting ready to jump onto a real life stage. So, no, I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me back. It's great to be back. I'm excited to talk through today something a little bit different.
Yeah. So last time, what was the topic you came on about last time then?
I think it was, if I remember correctly, just general business structure, if I remember correctly, and how to get things up and running and moving forward. And I think like from this particular time, we're obviously talking a bit more about follow-up. And I think from my perspective, the great thing that we've seen in the industry over the last year or so is that rapid growth that everyone's gone through. People who have been consistent with their actions, they've seen their businesses naturally grow. And I was actually talking to somebody about this morning. There's this interesting phenomenon of everyone used to be chasing the 10K month, and then it turns into the 20K month. Now it turns into how do I make this something sustainable long term? And you see people constantly evolving and going through like their next iterations of themselves. And it's exciting to see, I think, the continual growth of everyone in the industry who truly cares about helping people.
Yeah, and that is, like you say, it's the big thing. Like, if you have that core mission, if you know why you're doing it, it's a lot more powerful to want to keep it going, especially through the tough times that we all have as business owners, because it's not always plain sailing and nice and easy. And everybody is wondering, I'm actually in the gym today and it's bloody freezing, so I'm trying to stay as warm as possible. Okay, so we're going to talk about the follow-up process, or creating a nice follow-up process. So for anybody maybe new to the fitness industry, maybe they've just got qualified, or maybe they haven't been going long, what does a follow-up process actually mean? What is that term all about?
And I think so. Follow-up is one of those things that I think a lot of people think they understand what follow-up is, and they never really invest any great time into learning follow-up. Follow-up ultimately is the art of keeping a process going and trying to move it forward to the next stage, ideally towards a close. And I think this is one of those things that, especially for people who are either new to running a business or who are now at a point where they're trying to optimize their business, follow-up is one of those things that generally gets neglected because people have a belief that, like, well, I don't want to hassle somebody, I don't want to make them feel badgered, I don't want to constantly be, are you ready now, how's it going, and have the same message over and over again. But something that became really clear to me at a very early stage inside of my career, I spent most of my career obviously in sales, was how important sales is, but how important follow-up is, but you have to frame it in a way that sits and aligns with yourself, because you can understand that something's important, but it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to do it unless you can align with it. For me, it was these three simple facts that really made follow-up a top priority. The first one is only 2% of sales happen on the first attempt. So if you go into every sales situation or every lead nurture situation and you understand only 2 out of 100 stand the chance of converting at this point, and you may be able to outperform average metrics, but they're still going to be within touching distance of them, you all of a sudden go, well, this has to become more of a journey. The next number, 3% of sales happen at the second attempt. So we've accounted for 5% in the first 2 attempts. The most alarming statistic is that most people who are business owners or who work in sales in any capacity, that includes every single coach who sells, who watches this, generally gives up at 2 attempts. So if you can outperform your competition by simply staying in that pocket and even just getting to 3 attempts, you're going to be ahead of your competition. But the really exciting thing is that 80% of sales happen between the 5 to 12 touch point mark. That's that critical exchange point. That's where you've built enough know, like, and trust. That's where you're now in a place where 80% of sales can happen. So if you can just endure that process to get you into that pocket of 5 to 12, now we know we're in a place where we stand a much better chance of creating closed sales. So my brain immediately just goes, how do I get there as quick as possible?
And that is such a key point. Like, we'll have people reach out to us and say, Dave, can you do my Facebook ads? Okay, I'm hoping to make sales straight away for when these ads go live. Like, wow, it isn't going to work like that. Like, what do you say, 5 to 12 touch points, do you say, is where 80% to do? So no one's, if they've never known you, they're not going to see your advert or see your social media posts or find you on Instagram and instantly buy from you. Like Alan's saying, they need to have been in contact or seen your stuff a minimum of 5 times before they start getting there. So let's go through just those basic touch points initially. Then what is a touch point? What can we classify as a touch point?
Yeah, so this is anything that starts to drive some kind of interaction. So this can be, and I think this is definitely one of the areas that the online fitness industry has done things not very well. We've kind of gone at it a little bit cart in front of the horse. So traditional offline sales, well, the first thing we're going to do is it's going to be face-to-face contact with people, it's going to be phone calls. But because we're able to exist in Facebook land or Instagram or whichever platform you choose, social messaging sits at the forefront of what we're doing. So an initial touch point for 90% of people is going to be they either comment on some content that you've put out or an ad, or you're going to reach out to them in Messenger. And I think at this point, immediately, some people will probably be getting that uneasy, anxious feeling of, oh my God, I've got to do something on Facebook Messenger with somebody. I don't want to sound like a spammy DMer. And ultimately, that is one route. There's a volume-based approach. You can hammer hundreds of people. It's a thankless task. It works, whether we like it or not. It does work to a degree. However, it doesn't align very well with a lot of coaches. So a touch point would be any kind of message interaction. For me, I think something that's incredibly important, especially the more sophisticated the online fitness industry becomes with the prospect, is we have to make sure we're adding value. I think our prospects can now smell somebody who's just in it for a sale very, very quickly. So we can be looking at social media messaging. It's a great starting point. And then we want to start exploring the other avenues. Next obvious one, email. After that, if we can collect a phone number, text message or WhatsApp. Obviously, phone calls are fantastic. If you are comfortable on a phone and you can collect the phone number, obviously, if you're texting them, you're likely to have their phone. So I would suggest phoning them. And I know this is something that you talk a lot about, don't you, yourself, David, with regards to phoning people. I think it's one of the most underutilized tools inside of online fitness and maybe fitness as a whole. And for some industries, it's their sole lead mechanism is using the phone. Then you've got some slightly different things. So things like handwritten notes. If you can get somebody's postal address, so if you can get them, and I think this is the thing, all of a sudden, I'm sure somebody's watching this going, a handwritten note. I'm not writing letters to people. This is 2021. Like, I'm not writing a letter. But think of it from this perspective. If you could profile your ideal clients and you can identify these people are my hot list. These are people who I would love to have inside of my business, and you can understand the monetary value assigned to them. Well, you need to be willing. Some people are going to use ads. Just because you're potentially doing organic marketing doesn't mean you shouldn't spend any money. How can you help to win this person round? If you can collect their postal address through some kind of conversation, it's unlikely you're going to get it off of a cold message. But as we start to get into that 5, 6, 7 touch point mark, likelihood is we're going to have had some kind of conversation with them. Likelihood is they're going to start to go through some of our programs or free content. We're going to start to do things with them. We want to really connect with this person. So being able to send them things that directly help build that relationship That is not a free water bottle with our company logo on it. That's going to be something tied directly to them, something like a handwritten note, those types of things. Those are all going to be classed as touch points. Then we start to look at other things. So surveys, sending out links to newsletters and blogs that are valuable to them. Because one of the biggest issues that people see inside of the whole lead generation process is they feel that you're just out for blood, that you just want the sale. You don't truly care about helping them. You say you do, but actually you don't care. You just want the sale. Being able to send people and connect people with information from other people inside of your industry who are credible sources, that all of a sudden takes things to a different level. Because now it's a case of, do you know what, David, I saw this newsletter the other day from XYZ person. I thought of you specifically. I tagged you in it, sent you a link to it, depends on the relationship. All of a sudden, we start to build more of a relationship rather than simply some kind of communication backwards and forwards. So those are some definite core areas that people can start to connect with people on.
And I put 4 things down here. And the first one I want to talk about is that front of mind thing. Like you were saying, 5 or 6 touch points. We're going into the perfect time of year for touch points. The sales for this month are going to be a little bit down, but guarantee after the 26th, they're going to be searching. You want to be front of mind. So if you've got these touch points in, the letter, like no other Fit Pro has ever sent me a letter in the post before. Who's going to be front of mind when it's time to like drop some weight or tone up or whatever? Allan, because he sent me that letter. All those touch points makes you front of mind. And like you said, another one, instead of going straight in for the kill, take your time to actually learn about them. The more you show that you're invested in wanting to learn about them, it's going to make such a difference. Even if you know they've got a dog or a pet, or if there's a family issue, or they broke down, if you drop those small things into a conversation, it makes such a big difference because it actually does show that you really do passionately care about them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is one of those things that once you start to, and this is something that I recommend everybody does, is really understand who is your ideal client, not just who is a client, but who is that ideal client and what is their behavior. Because something that we see with when we do this with our clients, it's really interesting, is that quite often their ideal client is very rarely on their email list until maybe a week or so before they become a client. And it really depends who your ideal client is, but the people we tend to work with, that seems to be a phenomenon that we see happen over and over again. So that means you can't just rely simply on having somebody on your email list. That doesn't mean emails are bad, but that then creates a new opportunity of email then serves a purpose to help to condition somebody who maybe isn't an ideal client, and through follow-up and consistent contact allows you to start that belief adjustment journey that they have to go through to get to a place to be an ideal client. But having these other mechanisms, these other ways of contacting people, this is where you can really reach your ideal client, because you can guarantee, especially now with the sophistication that most people's ideal clients have, and by sophistication, I just mean they've been through people's processes over and over again. They understand a 2-step. They know that you're probably going to want to ask 4 questions before you give them the PDF. So start to make adjustments, start to manage this differently, stand out, zig when everyone else zags. Like, it's about becoming that other side of the coin, being able to, like you say, drop a personal note into them, or be able to send them a personalized WhatsApp, which is a video message with their name at the beginning of it, and it starts referencing certain points, starting to treat them as somebody who they're actually on your mind. Like, that creates something so much more powerful than simply drip feeding them an email sequence yet again, inviting them to your 5-day challenge yet again, things that they've already seen, they've already done. Because if they're speaking to you, chances are they're speaking to 5 other coaches at any one point, and you're on interview right now. So you need to start standing out. And I think that's the real importance when we start looking at follow-up. This isn't simply about converting sales. This is about building relationships and what else comes with those relationships.
Yeah, that's a key point. Like you're saying, you zig when they zag. There could be a prospect who's just come across you, but they're currently working with somebody else and they're just getting tired and frustrated. It's not for them, and they've come across you. They're now making that decision of should I move across to you, or they've been there, they've tried that thing that you're doing before, it didn't work for them last time, they spent a lot of money doing these things, why should they try it again? And like you say, the more touch points, the more bits of content, the more you kind of really showing them that you really do care, the more likely they're going to be gravitated and pulled towards what you have to offer you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one other thing just around follow-up in general is, so I have a really simple principle, which I call the ABC. So A is action, which is your mechanism. And this can be applied to any part of life or business, really. But in this situation, we use it for follow-up. B is your belief. So it's the story that you tell yourself. And C is the conditions or the state that you show up in. So when we look at follow-up, most people come at it from the perspective of, well, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't want to pester people. I can just send them an email. Like, there's always usually a playing down of the follow-up process. Or I don't want to make a phone call. I'll only speak to them if they booked in a call. That story that we tell ourselves is what stops us from truly excelling, when all of a sudden you realize that all we have to do is get above 2 touch points. If we can outperform our competition, we're already way ahead. And maybe you don't make it all the way to getting everyone to that 12 touch points or beyond, but it's about taking those forward steps, because that story that you define for yourself, a great example, and you mentioned it a minute ago, sales will probably be down for December for a lot of people. But if you have a really robust follow-up process and you have a strong methodology, I don't disagree with you. December is always a challenging month, but you absolutely can excel with your sales if you have that strong methodology, you have that belief that I have my processes always yield the results that I need, and then you go and take the actionable steps to achieve it. That's what leads to that predictability inside of the business.
There's something you just said that, and it's kind of like the arrogant approach to us becoming fit pros. It was definitely me when I first qualified. I was like, I've got my qualification. I'm a qualified PT now. Everybody is going to want to come and work with me. I can help them get results. I know they can get results. Somebody comes onto the website, they put their details in, and you're just like, oh, they'll phone me because they know I can get them the results. And this is like the wrong way of thinking about it. Like, Allan could be now, as I'm talking, he could be applying for something on the internet now, but he's in the conversation. He's not putting 100% attention to what he's doing. If you don't follow up with Allan, then you've lost him. And this is the same with the ads or messages. And something I post about all the time, if someone messages you on Facebook or someone drops you an email, just imagine they've walked into your gym and they've asked you a question. You're not going to make them stand there for half an hour, 20 minutes, and then reply. If you can reply instantly, just reply like ASAP. Just get back to them straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. Time is something that's so important with the follow-up process. And I think this is one of those things that makes follow-up very scalable, is looking at it from the perception of, okay, look, the business has grown. I can't maybe personally respond to messages all of the time. How can I manage it? And then it just comes down to the questions that we ask. So how can we give somebody a fantastic experience? Well, that's why help desk software was created. That's why people bring in VAs. That's why you bring in team members. There's a million different ways of skinning that cat, so to speak. But it comes down to understanding what is that journey. And this is the thing. And I'd love to know your thoughts on this. But I think so often with online in particular, everyone tries to overcomplicate everything. If somebody was in front of you and they said, I might possibly be interested in using your services, what are you going to do? Like, how do you manage that conversation? Because that's how you should be managing it online. That's how you should be following up with the person. It's going to be a case of, if they walk back in your gym, you're going to go over to them, you're going to tap them on the shoulder and you go, oh, we spoke the other day. Wondered if you've given any more thought to what we spoke about. Also, I thought of this. This might be helpful to you. That's all we're doing with follow-up. But we're then starting to systemize it in the online world so that we can do this in a scalable way and we don't burn ourselves out doing everything single-handedly.
And that comes back to what you said at the start about the mindset thing, the something inside of us that's really stopping us from saying, do you want to buy it? Or let's actually have that conversation. Or I've seen you've liked a couple of my posts, you've commented a lot on my posts recently. Do you want to know more about what it is I have to offer? I don't know, what we must have something in our brains and our heads that stop us sometimes from really taking that step. But there's been times where you've definitely taken that step. You've said to somebody, you know what, you've been following me for a while. Why don't you come down? And that person signed up. All they needed was you. They needed you to pull them across the line rather than you waiting for them to come across the line themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that fear of rejection, isn't it, that people have naturally built inside of them, that they don't want to put themselves out there to get shot down because we're coming at it from an emotional perspective. Whereas if we have that solid methodology of this is how I manage my follow-up, this is how I engage with a prospect, this is how I would engage with somebody who comments on my post, and you have those step-by-step actions, this is why you see VAs do so well in repetitive tasks, because there is no emotion for them in the process. They literally are there to smash out the volume of a set action that they've had laid out in front of them in an A, B, C, D, E, F list of steps. They just go and do it. They are not bothered about the outcome because they understand that they've been given the instruction to complete the process. And all of a sudden something magical happens. And I'm sure everyone who's hired a good VA has seen this. The first time they go, this is my process of how I do this, the VA just goes and does it. And you're like, wow, and then you look at what they're doing, you're like, oh God, I don't know if I'd have sent that message there. And then you're like, well, that's my process though. And they've done it. And you actually get the end result that you know you would hope to get. And it's all because they just follow the process. They have that solid methodology. They're stripping out the emotion, and it allows us to just take that manageable action.
Okay, so we've talked about creating those touch points. This is for people on our social media, our website, our email, and all these other different things. Now, someone's actually got in contact with us. Maybe they've seen our ad on Facebook. Maybe they've been to the website. Maybe they've messaged us on Facebook. How do we create a nice process or follow-up now to actually take them from an inquiry to an actual consultation/sale?
Yeah, so this is going to depend on where they've come from, how warm they are, because I think this is one of the next mistakes people make is they treat everyone the same. They presume everyone is in the same state and they're either over familiar or under familiar with the prospect. So you're either giving them not enough warmth because they're already a warm, hot prospect and you're adding too much time to the process, or you're treating a cold lead as if you would a boiling hot lead. And they feel like you're being too over familiar with them and they don't know the first thing about you. So they start to recoil quite hard. So I think it's very important to understand the journey. And this is going to need to be built around each person individually. So from the perspective of your business is going to be unique. Yes, there's principles that everyone can take, but it has to be built from a perspective to have truly connect with the prospect. It needs to be built around you and your business. So if you have somebody coming from your website and they have simply sent in a basic communication, I'm interested in more information, took them 5 seconds to submit the application, they're a stone cold lead. They're barely interested at this point. They maybe saw something you wrote, there was an easy action to complete, so they just completed it. Minimal time investment at this point. It's now about starting to take that prospect on a journey. So hopefully we will have created we'd have collected some asset, email, phone number, maybe both. We want to start communication with them. We want to start with the lowest, in my opinion, invasiveness level of communication. So something like a email, social media message, possibly a text message or a WhatsApp message. I think that takes it up the chain a bit. But one of those three is a very non-confrontational way of getting in contact with somebody. And we want to start driving this engagement. And we want to start to systemize it. We want to hit them in multiple places. So hitting them in the email and on social at the same time, making sure that conversation is coherent so that one is addressing the other. Hey, David, saw that you dropped me a request on the website. I've dropped you an email over. That's coming from social. And the same vice versa from the email side of things. And we're trying to get that engagement, trying to start a conversation. So following simple conversational patterns, acknowledge, pivot, question. If you're acknowledging what they do, you pivot to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. Always end with a question. It's how you naturally drive any conversation forward. Do that with anything and anyone, and you will keep a conversation alive as long as you want to keep it alive.
So if we're keeping a conversation alive, how do we and with that in all these conversations with all these new people, how do we refrain from feeling like we're being spammy, and how do we actually not be spammy? Is there like certain things that we shouldn't really be talking about that makes us sound like a spammy type of person?
Yeah. So I think this breaks down into two main conversations. And I think too often people feel spammy because they go straight to conversation two. Conversation one should simply be about getting to know the person, getting to understand who they are, what they're interested in, what we align on, so what we have in common, and where a gap might exist. Too often people are trying to turbocharge this conversation and get straight into a hot lead conversation of let's book a call, here's a sale page, or whatever it might be, where we actually need to take some time to understand, is this a person that I want to potentially work with? Let's get to know the person. Let's see what they're maybe even struggling with. We want to have a very simple conversation, not trying to create some level of positioning. We're not trying to do anything salesy. We are simply trying to have a conversation at this point and see if we can, as we get towards the end of this conversation, add some value. But I think this is a critical step that so many people miss because they have this inner conflict of, I want to get sales, but I don't want to be spammy. The brain doesn't hear whether it's a positive or a negative. It just hears spammy and sales, and you end up sounding spammy when you don't even want to, because you're not having a normal conversation with somebody first. So I think that's a very important thing, and that comes down to identifying the prospects. Cold lead, having a standard conversation with them in one of these non-invasive ways. So social media would probably be the best place to have that, possibly via email, depending on who the ideal client is. And we want to have some back and forths. That's going to naturally get us into that 4, 5, 6 touch point mark. Now we're ready. If they're starting to show signs that they have pain, now we can start to transition to conversation two, which is where we really start to identify what's their pain, how can we help them, and that's when we drive them to a call. And all of this is pre-call. Follow-up would traditionally be, I think for a lot of people, post-call, but we're following up with this prospect throughout this entire process, and we're really taking them on an entire journey.
So the big question a lot of fit pros, I'm guessing, will have, me and you both included in this, is somebody's maybe reached out or they followed us on Instagram. We've started a conversation with them, and the conversation just doesn't seem to be moving towards conversation two. You've had one or two backwards and forwards, and the conversation's just kind of gone dead. How do you reignite? How do you re-spark that conversation to take them forwards to conversation two?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So in my opinion, and in my experience, the thing that I think is important is for us to feel the conversation. If this prospect is giving us one-worded answers, this is not turning into a conversation, no matter what we're doing, there's a clear signal there. The person is clearly not ready for a conversation. They are a lead, but they are so stone cold that without an awful lot of persuasion and feeling incredibly salesy, I don't believe you're going to convert that person at that moment in time. You would be best served to add them to, say, an email list so that they get a drip sequence over an elongated period of time. Make sure that you think of them at certain points, follow up with them maybe on a monthly or quarterly basis with one very clear intent to add value to them. And it will always come back for me to adding value, because when somebody is ready to pull the trigger on something, if they are a good fit and they have been following you for a while, then all of a sudden they will move very quickly. And there's lots of different buying behaviors, isn't there? And this is one of those people, by the sounds of it, if you're getting those one-worded answers, they are very guarded. They are very skeptical. They have probably been burnt. They also probably think they can get the results that they want on their own. So there is a lot of red flags there. In my opinion, why try and sell them right now? They're not a good fit. We want to keep in touch, definitely, and follow up. But you have to understand, they are going to go into a long-term journey. They are going to be somebody who's outside of that 80%. They're probably going to take more than 12 touch points. They're already giving you signals. They're going to be a 9-month to 12-month continual follow-up. And I guarantee if you stuck with them for that period of time, you'd be the only person left standing.
Yeah. So let's go on the flip side then. The conversation one is going well. We're starting to move them to that conversation two. But I'm not very experienced with sales and making sales and stuff. How can I start to feel when should I know is the right time to really start saying, should we have a phone call, or here's my product, or let's get you down to the studio?
Yeah. So I think, and again, it's a really good question. Most people will naturally have a feeling in their stomach, like I feel like I should do something now. It's like when you start talking to somebody you find attractive. Maybe you want to ask them out for a drink. Maybe you want to ask them out for a second date, and you have this feeling of, should I ask them? Should I ask them? No, I'm not going to ask them. I'm scared. The person who just goes and asks will move things forward, because for me, like naturally I'm a very introverted person, so I had to create lots of stories and framing to allow me and give myself permission to go and do certain things. So one of the things that always sticks in my mind is no one thing will ruin a deal. You might say something that slows the deal down, but if it's truly meant to happen, the deal will still stay alight. It might just take a little bit longer. So I think when you're looking to offer a call, you should definitely have a checklist to make it clear that you understand what their goals are, what they're trying to achieve, like how long they've been stuck for. We want to have a good conversation, and we also want to have shared 2 or 3 pieces of really good value, because at that point, we're not just simply giving them 1-2-step post, then offering them a call. In some situations, that will work if you're confident with sales. However, if you're unconfident with sales, build a process that carries the person most of the way so that you can have a much easier conversation. I believe this is why, for a lot of people, 5-day challenges work so well, because the challenge itself conditioned people through daily follow up, through daily value exchange, that by the time they got to the end and they did a graduation workshop or a final webinar or whatever they wanted to call it in their challenge, prospects showed up ready to buy, because they were like, I've been blown away over the last 5 days. Here's my credit card. Like, how do I work with you more? That's all we're trying to create now through our follow up, through any lead conversation, so that we don't have to create massive change on a sales call. A sales call doesn't need to be a monumental moment where we have to do brain magic with people. It can be a process driven exercise that actually allows us to take somebody through a process.
Nice. Okay. I'm going to go back to that 5-day challenge thing now. So
Yeah.
if anybody is watching this and you've tried the 5-day challenge before and you think, you know what, that just didn't work or it didn't go to plan or anything, Allan literally hit the nail on the head there when he explained how you should do a 5-day challenge. It's not a case of inviting someone into your group, post for 5 days a video, and that's it. Allan literally said you have to message these people every single day individually to make sure they did the task or watched the video and stuff. And this is the follow-up. This is why we got Allan on here, to explain the follow-up process. Because if you're posting a video every day, you've got a reminder email to go and check the video out, and you're messaging them and having that conversation as well. By the end you go for that 5-day challenge, like Allan said, they're ready. They got their credit cards out. They're ready to buy from you. So that's the whole conversation, just that 30-second snippet there of following up constantly.
But also think of it from that perspective. The 5-day challenge is a great example of the critical exchange point, that 5 to 12 touch points. Everyone who goes through a challenge who buys has had a bare minimum of 5 touch points. Usually they're going to be way above that 10 to 12, because they're going to have been receiving emails, free training, a personal message each day. 5-day challenge, times that by 2, you're at 10 touch points, plus the sign up one, there's 11, plus book a call, there's your 12 touch points. It just goes to show the importance of those touch points inside of every conversation, because people just become so much more familiar with you, and they can see that you're there. I think challenges still work well at this point, but you can definitely see that sophistication of people now, because I think the standard challenge isn't as effective as it was 12 to 18 months ago, because the prospects have been through now so many of them. They need something they need the same thing packaged in a new way.
Nice. Okay. So to finish then, is there anything that maybe we haven't covered or talked about when it comes to actually following up or creating a follow-up process?
I think the one thing that I would like to leave everyone with, two main things. firstly, if you take nothing else from this conversation other than get to that 5 to 12 touch point mark as quickly as you can, and make sure that they are value based. So if you are saying things like, just wanted to touch base with you, how's things going, have you made a decision yet, they are red flags. They are not the kind of follow-up you want to be doing. You want to be doing value based. So think of it, what will this message I'm about to send to somebody actually help move them forward? Will this give them something to think about? Will this give them something to make them think that I'm thinking about them? Even if it's just a case of you're saying to them, look, I put a new piece of content up yesterday. It came from a conversation we had a while ago. I'd love you to go check it out. Even if something as simple as that is a great way to add value to somebody. So if you take nothing else from this conversation, I'd love you to take that. The other thing, when you're mapping out a follow-up process, I would strongly recommend mapping out at least a year's worth of follow-up. Don't create it all in one go. You'll be there forever. Do it, like, create it as you need it. But you absolutely need to understand that your prospects, some of them are going to take 12 months plus to convert. So how are you going to take care of those people? Make sure you have a process built out that it starts very condensed and it slowly elongates itself out. So the first week of follow-up, let's say it's post-call in this situation, you want a touch point, this is my own personal opinion on it, but a touch point every day with them from day 1 to 5. Some reason to be reaching back out to them. If they haven't signed up on that call and you felt they were a good person for your program or what it is you do, daily touch points for up to day 5. Then we are going to go to weekly for a few weeks, and then we're going to move to monthly from that point on. So the touch points get further and further out, but you want to have this on a range of mediums. Don't just do it all on email. Don't just do it all on social. Have multiple streams. Become present to them everywhere.
Nice. Okay, so for anybody watching or listening now who's quite inspired and quite motivated about creating some more touch points to actually building a system out, like you said, the year-long journey, how can people reach out and learn a little bit more about what it is you do, Allan?
Yep, so 2 main places. My website, allanmiles.com, or you can reach me on Facebook. It's the best place to get hold of me. Facebook.com/allan.miles. Really easy. I'm the first Allan Miles that comes up. I'm wearing a white top like this, with a green background, and obviously my website is pretty easy to find. It's literally my name.com, so allanmiles.com. You can reach out to me there. Links to all of my socials are on there, and it'd be great to have a conversation with anybody, and maybe you'll even experience my follow-up.
Yeah. That's the only thing you've done now, though, is you have to make sure you always have that same profile picture forever now, because people are going to be searching it now.
Yeah, literally everywhere is the same profile picture, and it's a great picture of me. So as I age, everyone will jump onto a call with me in the future, and they'll be like, "Oh, you don't look like your profile picture." I was like, "Yeah, the picture was taken 5 years ago."
Allan, I appreciate you coming on today, and we'll probably see you on in another couple of months.
Lovely. Been great to be here. Looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
So that was Allan Miles giving us good insight into chasing up and following up with your leads to either get them booked in for their consultations or to make those sales online. If you want to know more about Allan, then feel free to reach out. But I look forward to bringing even more videos, even more podcasts, and even more stuff for you this year. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Cheers.